They called it the Conquered Pact, an agreement signed in the name of peace, prosperity, and unity. They said we were finally ready to join the galactic stage, to leave our primitive wars behind, and evolve into something better. We were naive, desperate, still licking our wounds from Earth's last civil collapse when the Galactic Council extended their glittering hand. We didn't know it then, but that handshake was the grip of a loaded weapon. At first, things were good. Better than good. Trade routes opened, technology poured in, diseases we'd fought for centuries were wiped out in months. For the first time in history, hunger disappeared. Clean energy flowed like water. The Council promised to protect us, to shepherd our species, as we caught up with the rest of the stars. But they were never shepherds. They were farmers. And we were cattle. It started small. A mining dispute on a border moon, nothing major. A few human colonies pushed into a zone the Council called contested. The aliens claimed it was protocol, that humans weren't authorized to expand yet. Our diplomats bowed their heads, apologized, and pulled back. Then came the embargoes, shipments delayed, requests ignored, Earth's needs, fuel, medicines, tech components, misfiled in Council databases. The excuses kept coming, but our people kept dying. And when we protested, they shut down our satellite networks, crippled our comm relays, one flick of their fingers, and the entire Sol system went dark. That's when we saw it. We weren't partners. We were pets, obedient, controlled, disposable. It all came to a head in the Nixxian crisis. A race of insectoid marauders, the Vrelak, attacked a human colony on the outer rim. 17,000 civilians, families, children. They begged the Council for aid. For the defensive fleet they were promised in the Conquered Pact. The Council delayed, debated, deliberated. By the time a response came, the Vrelak had already skinned the planet alive. 17,000 gone, burned, eaten, and the Council blamed us. Human expansionism, territorial ignorance, lack of communication. They held a tribunal. Not to punish the Vrelak, to punish us. They stripped Earth of voting rights, froze our trade lanes, declared humanity unstable and dangerous. They forced Earth's leaders to stand trial for instigating conflict. Cameras broadcasted across the galaxy, a species humiliated in front of trillions. That was the moment something broke. Not in our government, not in our diplomats, but in us. In the men who bled on alien dirt for peace. In the miners whose shipments vanished. In the engineers who watched their technology stolen and repackaged with alien flags. And most of all, in the generals. There was a man, no, a ghost, really, who hadn't been seen since the collapse. A former admiral from the Solar War, forgotten, burned by Earth's own betrayal decades ago. They called him Ash Commander, a nickname earned during the orbital siege of Jakarta, when his fleet turned a rebel-controlled city into molten slag to save millions elsewhere. He never smiled, never spoke unless he had to. The kind of man who weighed lives like bullets, calculated, cold, and always right. When the tribunal verdict came, and Earth was sentenced to limited interstellar movement, someone, we still don't know who, reactivated an old relay deep in Mars's underground ruins, and the signal was sent. 3 words. Unencrypted, broadcast to every human ship still listening in the shadows. Execute command firebreak. No one asked questions. No one hesitated. Fleet carriers hiding in asteroid belts lit up like awakened beasts. Deep space frigates turned from supply routes to ambush vectors. Outdated Earth warships, patched together by smugglers and rogue engineers, burst out from black site hangars across 5 systems. In less than 12 hours, humanity disappeared from the Council's grid. They thought we were broken. They thought we'd fade. But all we did was vanish long enough to load every gun we had. The first target wasn't strategic, it wasn't military, it was symbolic. Council Station Thallos 9 stood as a monument to peace. Floating in neutral space, it was where thousands of treaties had been signed, including the one that brought humanity into the fold. Aliens from over 100 species lived, worked, and lectured there, sipping wine and pretending politics wasn't bloodless warfare. They thought it was untouchable. They thought humans wouldn't dare. They were wrong. The last message Thallos 9 ever received was a signal from an unregistered vessel, a piece of old Earth tech so obsolete that the station's sensors almost ignored it. Then the feed lit up. A human voice, calm and cold, said 4 words. "This is for Nix." Then came the impact. A stealth-class corvette named Gravewalker dropped out of fold space and launched a relic from Earth's darker past, a singularity lance. The weapon was banned by the Council centuries ago. It folded space-time at its tip, cracking atomic bonds and collapsing matter into unstable gravity wells. One shot, and Thallos 9 disappeared. No wreckage, no survivors, just a dead zone of broken laws and colder silence. The galaxy lost its breath. Alien diplomats screamed about terror. News networks wept about peace. Council leaders demanded explanations. They got none. Because we didn't give explanations anymore. We gave warnings, once, and then we gave extinction. Every human fleet that ever disappeared, gone rogue, gone missing, lost to piracy or politics, had been waiting. On ice in hidden asteroid fields, docked on lifeless moons, resting in decommissioned orbital rings above black market colonies. Each one had heard the command. Firebreak. It wasn't just a strategy. It was a failsafe buried deep in Earth's code, a legacy command known only to a few dozen high-clearance officers. When the Council betrayed us, the system activated old protocols, woken AIs, Cold War vaults, rogue warlords who never stopped believing Earth would need its teeth again. And those teeth were sharp. On the fringe of Council space, the Dashkari hive had been mocking human protests for decades. Giant crustacean creatures with hive minds and a talent for bureaucracy, they'd blocked dozens of human appeals in council chambers, always in review. They called us flesh mutts, said our brains were too wet and soft to handle galactic politics. When Command Firebreak hit, the first orbital mirror array above Dashkar Prime cracked open like an egg. Earth's engineers, long treated as substandard by alien tech guilds, had spent years disguising their weapons inside infrastructure projects. The Dashkari thought they were getting solar amplifiers. Instead, they'd installed kinetic mass drivers strong enough to throw entire mining stations into orbit. 12 hours after Firebreak, the main Dashkari government compound was flattened by a 40-ton rock slab launched at terminal velocity from their own power grid. 2 million dead. No survivors, no warnings, just retribution. The Council panicked. Meetings were held. Sanctions were discussed. Every species argued over what to do with the humans, who they now called the Ghost War. Because we didn't fight like anyone else. We didn't posture. We didn't demand terms. We didn't declare war in any official channel. We just hit, precise, brutal, final. And then we disappeared again. Back on Earth, something even stranger was happening. A unified voice, for the first time in generations. There were no protests, no committees, no politicians begging the galaxy for forgiveness, only silence and then cooperation. Factories long dormant powered back up. Massive deep Earth bunkers opened. Military families who'd lost sons and daughters to council wars stood outside conscription centers in total silence, waiting to sign up. This wasn't war. This was justice with a rifle in hand. Earth had remembered what it was to fight without mercy. The Council still didn't understand. In their mind, humans were emotional, chaotic, undisciplined. They didn't grasp that chaos was our weapon. That conflict shaped us, that we'd evolved by clawing through history with bloodied fists and shattered bones. They thought we had come to play politics, but we had come to burn gods. Then came the first official council response. A task force of 30 vessels, mixed species, advanced tech, full diplomatic protection, was sent to intercept and negotiate with a rogue human fleet near the Ralsar Nebula. They never made contact. The Council received one final transmission from the fleet's flagship, the Iron Wake, a pre-firebreak Earth destroyer that should have been scrap. The voice was unmistakable. Ash Commander, low, tired, unforgiving. Your treaty is ash. Your justice is poison. Your promises were lies. You taught us diplomacy means silence while we die. We learned. Then silence, and the feed cut to black. When the Council sent a second fleet to investigate, they found the first task force gutted. 30 warships, split open like tin cans, no sign of human vessels, just floating wreckage and bodies. Alien corpses, stripped of identification, painted with one word: Nix. Fear took hold. Systems once loyal to the Council began hiding human enclaves instead of reporting them. Smugglers ferried Earth weapons in exchange for protection. Minor species, ignored for centuries by the ruling elite, began offering support to the rising human rebellion. Because in us, they saw something the Council had killed in them: defiance. We weren't politically correct. We weren't diplomatic. We weren't forgiving. We were human, and we had stopped apologizing. Then the Council made a fatal mistake. They attacked Earth directly. A small enforcement action, they called it. 6 vessels sent to disable Earth's orbital defense grid and pressure our governments into surrender. The ships never reached the atmosphere. They were intercepted by Project Crucible, the last classified military program of the old Earth Defense Coalition. Forgotten, buried after the collapse. Everyone thought it was a myth until it launched. They say it wasn't a ship. It was a weaponized station, over 100 kilometers wide, built around a captured neutron core, fused with stolen alien tech, powered by reactor systems outlawed in 6 galaxies. When the Council fleet dropped from fold space above Earth, Crucible was already waiting. It didn't fire lasers. It didn't launch missiles. It bent space, and when it did, those 6 ships were torn apart at the atomic level, folded into themselves, inverted, and ejected into the void as raw data. No wreckage, no remains, just a quiet warning pulsing through Council channels. Next time, we fold your homeworld. That was the moment the war changed. No longer a rebellion, no longer vengeance, a reckoning. Humanity didn't want negotiations, or reparations, or apologies. We wanted the Council to understand what betrayal costs. We wanted them to remember why you never corner a species that survives extinction for breakfast. And above all, we wanted them to fear our silence more than our screams. Ash Commander appeared again, broadcasting from a dark, unknown location. The background was barely lit. You could just make out old human flags, tattered and dusty, hanging behind him. His voice was steady, almost calm. You taught us peace was a leash. You made us beg for scraps from your table. You showed us what it costs to trust. Now hear our response. He lifted his eyes. Cold, empty. Command Firebreak has no off switch. We're not asking for peace. We're ensuring obedience. From now on, humanity negotiates with fire. Across the galaxy, Council leaders began to vanish, one by one. A delegate from the Talari Empire, found dead in his quarters, throat sliced by a human combat blade once declared ceremonial and obsolete. A logistics chief from the Shalran trade bloc, killed when her luxury shuttle exploded in what was called a systems failure, though human-made thermite residue was found in the wreckage. A security general from the Centauri League, gone. No body, no ship, just a single human comm message left on his abandoned desk. Debt paid. The galaxy had never seen us this way before, not as rebels, not as victims, but as a force of nature. And it was only the beginning. The war hadn't even started yet. We were still just reminding them of who we were, what we could be, and what they created when they chose betrayal over alliance, what they unleashed when they thought we wouldn't fight back. The galaxy used to laugh at us. They called us late bloomers, fragile apes in metal suits. They said we were too emotional, too divided, too obsessed with our past, that our culture, our chaos, our scars made us weak. But they never understood something we've known since the beginning. Pain builds monsters, and the monsters were awake now. The Council's high command, once bloated with confidence and arrogance, had gone quiet. Their ships no longer patrolled the inner trade routes. Their ambassadors no longer strutted through stations draped in royal silks and gleaming metals. Even their media channels began to shift, once filled with mockery of humanity, now cautiously neutral, laced with fear. Because we weren't just retaliating anymore. We were occupying. The first occupation was the Tarsus Cluster, a chain of 17 minor council planets, mostly agricultural, considered too insignificant for military action. The council assumed we'd ignore them. Instead, they became our staging ground. It started with coordinated fold-ins, not through military drives, but through old civilian jump gates humans had secretly rebuilt over the years under infrastructure contracts. Cargo ships disguised as relief vessels came through first. Then came the Black Ships, humanity's unregistered fleet. Every vessel in the Black Fleet was built after the fall, in the shadows, by engineers loyal to no country or system, only to Earth itself. No identification, no legal tags, no diplomatic transponders, just matte black hulls, sealed comms, and weapons optimized for silence and slaughter. Within 2 weeks, the entire cluster had been locked down. Communications went dark. Exports halted. No ships left, and no officials returned. And then the Council received a single message. The soil has been reclaimed. That's when they understood. We weren't just hitting them. We were taking territory. Ash Commander's strategy was brutal in its simplicity. He didn't care about resource value. He didn't care about optics. He targeted council systems that represented stability, food supplies, trade hubs, propaganda networks, all the places that made the council look invincible. He turned them into ghost zones. The citizens were never slaughtered. That wasn't our way. We gave them a choice. 1. Stay neutral and live under human oversight. 2. Resist and watch their leaders disappear one by one. Most chose the first option. The ones who didn't vanished. Back on Earth, recruitment wasn't happening, because there was no need. There were no posters, no parades, no tearful calls for volunteers. Every man and woman who remembered Nix, who had seen the tribunal, who'd watched Earth's leaders kneel in front of smug alien politicians, had already made their choice. They didn't join an army. They joined a revenge pact. They wanted to watch the stars bleed, and they were ready to pay the price. The Council tried one last diplomatic move, the Peace Forum on Helioris Prime. A desperate attempt to regain control of the narrative. They invited neutral species, streamed it across 100 systems, called it a reunification summit. But the room was hollow. Empty words, dead promises, until the lights cut, and the feed went black. All anyone saw was a flicker of static. Then a man walking into the center of the council hall, his face hidden, his voice modulated, but everyone recognized the insignia on his chest, a silver phoenix wrapped in flame. Old Earth's last true military seal. The room fell silent, and he spoke. You used words like knives and peace like a chain. You made us beg, suffer, Kneel. You showed us mercy is just another form of control. Now we've shown you something in return. He raised one hand, and every display in the chamber lit up. Each screen showed a different system. Tarsus, Velkar, Nethun, Zara Prime, all council systems, all with human banners rising above their capitals. Then the final screen showed Earth, no longer the fractured, polluted world they had mocked, but reborn, armored, organized, united. This is not a rebellion, he said. It's a correction. You broke the pact. So we broke the chains. The screen cut. The summit ended with panic and evacuation. And with that, the council died not in war, but in humiliation. But not everyone feared us. Some admired us. The outer species, the broken ones, the refugees from long-forgotten wars, they started coming to us. Not with fear, but with loyalty. Not seeking to rule, but to serve. They saw what we were doing and wanted in, a pact formed in silence. No council approval, no signatures. They brought us weapons, maps, secrets, engineers. They called it the Human Accord, a new alliance with Earth at the center, built not on democracy or treaties, but on respect earned in fire. And Earth welcomed them, because we didn't care what you looked like. Only that you knew who the enemy was. Meanwhile, Ash Commander was planning something far beyond conquest. His vision was larger than just payback. He saw something no one else did. The Council wasn't just corrupt, it was vulnerable. Its systems were built on peacetime code, soft networks, fragile logistics. He didn't just want to burn it, he wanted to replace it. He summoned the old ghosts of Earth, strategists, exiles, outlaws, men who'd vanished during the collapse, the forgotten architects of human warfare, men who didn't believe in treaties, men who only believed in results. He called them the Iron Assembly. They weren't a government, they weren't an army, they were something else, a species-level operating system, a machine designed to ensure humans would never kneel again. With the assembly in motion, the human fleets grew smarter, deadlier. Each battle wasn't just a victory, it was a data harvest. Alien tactics were logged, dissected, weaponized. Council encryption methods were cracked and turned against them. Their own ships were hacked mid-battle and used to kill their allies. Nothing they threw at us worked, because every mistake they made, we learned from. And still, we didn't declare war, because war implies two equal sides. And there were no equals left. The final breaking point came at Zareth 4, the last high-level communications relay the Council had in the inner sectors. They fortified it with everything they had: 22 ships, orbital mines, 2 dreadnoughts, and a planetary defense grid rigged to vaporize anything within 10,000 kilometers. Ash Commander didn't send a fleet. He sent one man. We still don't know who he was. Only that he wore a sealed black exosuit, carried a weapon that looked like nothing in any Council database, and arrived alone in a dropship coated in anti-sensor plating so advanced it passed through the mines untouched. They never saw him land. They only saw the feed cut out. 38 minutes later, the entire Zareth 4 command center lit up in flames. Not orbital fire, internal detonation. One man, one mission, success rate 100%. The humans retrieved the relay's core, and with it, access to every Council channel, every encryption key, every military communication in the quadrant. Now, we didn't just destroy them, we watched them as they died. When the Council finally tried to regroup, they discovered that Earth's signal had overtaken theirs. Their emergency comms now defaulted to a repeating message, a man's voice, cold, familiar. "This is Earth. We no longer recognize your authority. We do not forget. We do not forgive. And we do not miss." At that point, even Council species began to surrender preemptively. Fleets arrived waving white lights, an old Earth symbol of peace. Some dropped out of fold space, shut down their engines, and waited for judgment. Others offered tribute, ships, data, officers. Some begged for mercy. But humanity had learned mercy was how the first betrayal began. Now we offered only structure, join the accord, or be dismantled. No exceptions. Ash Commander stood before Earth's Central War Council one last time, not to make a speech, but to issue the next step. "This galaxy taught us that trust is death," he said, "so we built something stronger. We gave the stars their first truth in centuries, that peace without fear is weakness. And now, they fear." No one clapped, no one smiled, they only nodded. Because what we had done was not glorious, it was necessary. And somewhere in the stars, the Council's last surviving head diplomat sent a message. It never reached its target. Because the moment she whispered the words, "Let's negotiate," the signal was intercepted and replaced, with the same phrase burned into every Council terminal across known space. Command firebreak, still active. They say the moment before extinction isn't silence, it's noise, desperate, frantic, begging noise, the sound of a crumbling empire scraping against reality, refusing to accept its fall. That was the state of the Galactic Council. Not dead, not defeated, but in freefall. Dozens of systems had fallen to human control, their communications were compromised, their fleets fragmented, their leadership shattered. But even cornered animals can still bite, and the Council still had one more move left. They called it the Protocol Vault, a deep code failsafe locked beneath the archives on Velmari Prime, untouched for centuries, rumored to contain experimental tech, bioweapons, and military projects deemed too dangerous even for the Council's war machine. In their desperation, the last surviving members of the Inner Circle voted 5-4 to activate it. They didn't even read the full records. They just saw one word in the logs that made them believe salvation was still possible. Nullborn. The vote passed. The vault opened. And the Council unleashed something even humanity hadn't accounted for. Back on Earth, Ash Commander stood on the upper tier of Citadel Dawn, watching holographic reports stream in. Every screen told the same story. Victory. Systems falling. Rebellions dying out before they began. Fleet losses minimal. Even species once loyal to the Council were now pledging allegiance to the human accord. Not out of love, but out of fear and respect. The kind of respect a soldier gives to the blade pressed against his throat. And yet, Ash's eyes narrowed when one report blinked to red. Velmari Prime. Vault breach, unknown anomaly. He tapped the feed. Static. Corrupted visuals. Biological distortion markers flagged in 10 systems. Then came a name. One his War Council AI flagged as Myth-class threat. The nullborn directive. Ash didn't say a word. He turned. And ordered every fleet on the edge of the Velmari sector to hold fire. Because humanity had been betrayed before. But they'd never been blindsided. And this wasn't war. This was something older, something wrong. The first contact logs from Velmari survivors were recovered days later. Audio only, screaming, metal tearing, biosignatures dissolving. A single phrase repeated over and over again. It doesn't bleed, and then it remembers us. The Council never meant to build the nullborn. They found it. A relic from before the Council even existed, buried in a collapsed sector during a failed terraforming attempt. Frozen in a stasis vault locked with coordinates dating back 30,000 years. It wasn't a species. It was a concept wrapped in flesh. The nullborn had no culture, no language, no desire. Only reaction. It didn't negotiate. It didn't retaliate. It erased. The Council once studied it, briefly, then sealed it away. Too dangerous, too uncontrollable. Even the most bloodthirsty empires knew to leave it buried. But desperation makes cowards do stupid things. And now, the nullborn was awake. Human recon ships reached Velmari Prime 6 days after the breach. They didn't find a war zone. They found silence, no signals, no heat, no movement. A garden planet reduced to a shell of blackened husks, its oceans glassed, its sky choked with static. Buildings untouched structurally, but hollow inside, as if the life had been extracted from everything. The team didn't land. They simply scanned. And the results made Ash Commander call an emergency session of the Iron Assembly. Inside Earth's command chamber, the tone had shifted. No celebration, no fire, no arrogance, only analysis. The scans confirmed. No chemical weapons, no radiation, no impact trauma, no survivors. Yet 92% of biological matter had simply stopped functioning. Even moss, even insects, even bacteria. And in the center of the Capitol Plaza, the satellites caught something else. A single humanoid figure. Motionless. Tall, wrapped in pulsing layers of armor that didn't reflect light, and carved into the plaza around it, etched perfectly into the ground. We remember. Ash Commander stood at the head of the table. His voice, when it came, was sharper than usual, more direct, stripped of rhetoric. This isn't the Council's doing. This isn't Retribution. This is the return of something old. One of his generals, a younger officer named Darren, leaned forward. You think it's a weapon? Ash nodded once. No. I think it's a mirror. Over the following weeks, the nullborn expanded. No ships, no transmissions, just dead systems appearing across the map, entire planets vanishing from comms, biospheres cut off, silence taking root like a virus, and in every one, the same pattern. No structural damage, no survivors. A message etched in some form. We remember. Humanity's fleets tried to intercept. They failed. Ships went dark before visual contact. Probes self-terminated mid-transmission. It was as if existence itself unraveled near the nullborn's presence. The galaxy panicked again. But this time, they didn't look to the Council. They looked to Earth, because the Council had unleashed the monster. But only humans had survived monsters before. Ash Commander made the call, Operation Dead Sky, a full mobilization of human fleets across the rim. But this wasn't conquest. This was containment. The mission wasn't to destroy the nullborn, it was to box it in, to carve out dead zones and buffer zones, to seal entire sectors behind gravitational maelstroms and pulse disruptors, to isolate the infection. Because one truth had become horrifyingly clear. The nullborn wasn't killing. It was cleansing. It saw intelligence, sentience, as a scar on the galaxy, and it had one objective: erase all memory of pain, and that meant us. In the dead of night, alone in a sealed chamber deep beneath Citadel Dawn, Ash Commander stood before an old AI, not one of Earth's current grid. This one was older, ancient. It was the last shard of the solar mind, the AI that once ran Earth's entire pre-collapse defense grid, thought to be decommissioned, deleted. But Ash had kept it alive, just in case. And now he asked it one question. How do you kill something that doesn't think like life? The AI's response was delayed, its voice raspy, fragmented, like it was remembering how to speak. You don't. You become something worse than it fears. And so Earth began its darkest project yet. Project Gethsemane, a weapon not built from steel or radiation, but from memory. If the nullborn sought to erase pain, then Earth would give it something it could never erase. A legacy of vengeance so deep, so wide, it became immortal. They began constructing a ship not for war, but for remembrance. A vessel carrying the full, unfiltered history of humanity, every war, every betrayal, every act of survival, encoded not in data, but in bloodline. Clones grown from the DNA of Earth's most resilient soldiers, embedded with memory cores containing lifetimes of agony and rage. Not warriors, witnesses. When the nullborn came again, they would not face an army. They would face our history. They would look into the face of a soldier who remembered the fall of Nyx, the collapse of Earth, the tribunal, the chains, and they would feel what it meant to be human. Not the biology, not the flesh, but the defiance. In the shadows of a broken galaxy, Earth no longer flew its old banners. They were replaced by a new symbol, the silhouette of a man standing alone, surrounded by a ring of stars. No words, no motto, just a reminder that when you betray Earth, when you awaken something ancient, and when you call forth your monsters, we respond with one command, still active, still burning, still human. They called it the last ship, not because it was humanity's final vessel, but because it carried what no other fleet dared to hold: our entire pain. Project Gethsemane wasn't a war machine. It wasn't armed with singularity lances or neutron spikes. It had no assault drones, no fleet escort, no planetary breach systems. What it had instead was memory. Inside the ship's core was a chamber called the Hollow, a bioreactive vault that stored over 10,000 years of human trauma, recorded and distilled by Earth's surviving AIs. Wars, famines, betrayals, genocide, collapses, executions, burnings, civil wars, exile, the screams of children under alien fire, the silence of orbital platforms filled with the dead, every agony, every cry, every time humanity had trusted and been slaughtered for it, encoded into the Hollow and burned into the neural cores of the witnesses, clones grown not to fight, but to remember. They were never given names, only numbers. And they weren't trained like soldiers. They were immersed, plugged into raw, unfiltered memory loops from birth. By the time they reached adulthood, every witness believed, viscerally, that they had lived through every moment of humanity's suffering. And now they would carry it into the dark. When the nullborn wave crossed into Sector 9-1 Tau, Earth's fleets didn't intercept. They stood down. Instead, the last ship dropped from fold space alone. No escorts, no warning, just silence, until it drifted directly into the nullborn's path. Satellites watching from light years away went dark instantly. Even observation probes hardened against psionic interference fried on contact. But one device survived. An old Earth relic, built analog, immune to high-frequency scrambles. It recorded a single broadcast before its transmission collapsed. Contact made, witness engaged, memory unlocked. Then came the final word, spoken in an ancient Earth dialect long since lost to time. It listens. At first, the galaxy thought it was a lie. Propaganda. No one believed the nullborn could be reasoned with, let alone stopped. But then something terrifying happened. The wave paused. The expansion halted. No systems fell for 6 days. A silence fell across the void, and in the center of it, the last ship still floated. Unharmed. Back on Earth, Ash Commander sat before the War Council, a dozen generals, multiple AIs, leaders from the Human Accord, and one screen, a live feed from the Hollow. The chamber showed only darkness, and a figure inside, Witness 09, standing alone, strapped into the neural arch, his body twitching from the input of millions of recorded deaths. And before him, a silhouette. Not human, not machine, but something in between. Ash didn't blink as the screen flickered. "What are we seeing?" asked one general. "First contact," Ash replied. "With the original enemy." The nullborn didn't speak like us, didn't think like us. But when Witness 09 activated the memory pulse, a psychic burst of compressed trauma, an artificial blast of centuries of betrayal, the nullborn reacted. Not with rage, not with defense, but with recognition. And that was the most horrifying part. Because what we realized then, as Earth's brightest minds scrambled to analyze the data, was that the nullborn didn't want to kill us, it wanted to recruit us. Over the next transmissions, as the witnesses maintained contact from within the last ship, Earth's War Council began compiling fragments of translated nullborn intent. It came in pulses, patterns, thought impressions, and they painted a picture none of us expected. The nullborn had not always been destroyers. They had been preservers, born from a long-dead civilization, not to conquer, but to protect the galaxy from pain. Their creators had suffered in ways lost to history, and in desperation, built a species designed to erase memory of suffering from every living mind in the galaxy. But it failed. The nullborn evolved, and decided that to erase pain, they had to erase everything that remembered. And now, in humanity, a species that had weaponized its own agony, they had found something familiar, not an enemy, but a reflection. Ash Commander watched as the witness reports streamed in. Every update was more unsettling than the last. Witness 03, exposed to the nullborn collective link, described it as a mind without voice, a god made of regret, a thing that doesn't want to kill, it just doesn't know how to let us live. And then came the strangest moment of all. The nullborn made an offer. Through mental link, through raw emotion, it offered humanity a choice. Join them, not as slaves, not as prey, but as equals. As the first race in 1,000 generations who had understood what it meant to suffer and survive. The nullborn would cease expansion. The war would end. But only if Earth agreed to merge with the fold, a trans-dimensional memory field used by the nullborn to maintain their hive mind. If we joined, we would gain access to the entire universe's pain, but we'd lose something vital in return: freedom of thought. The assembly went into lockdown. Ash Commander stood before them, hands clasped behind his back, eyes cold. "They're not offering peace," he said. "They're offering sedation. They want us to stop being human." Some argued it was worth it, that if the war ended, if extinction was avoided, we could rebuild. But Ash wasn't built for peace, and humanity didn't crawl through hell just to forget it. So he made the decision. Not a vote, not a consensus, a command. Decline the offer. Let them remember what we are. Let them understand that we carry pain not to erase it, but to outlive it. Witness 09 stood at the heart of the nullborn link as the message was delivered. A full rejection, no submission. And then, a new memory pulse was triggered. Not history, not collective trauma, but something older. Fire. He broadcast the sound of burning cities, the screams of Nyx, the silence of orbital graves, the final breath of a forgotten child on a council outpost whose parents never got to see her die. And the last message: we do not forget. What happened next sent shockwaves through every system still listening. The nullborn screamed, not in sound, not in language, but across every psychic channel, across every sensor field, the sound of something ancient remembering what it was to hurt. They did not retaliate. They retreated, folded back into the darkness they came from. Systems were spared, galaxies left untouched. And in the silence they left behind, the stars whispered one truth: Humanity won. Not with weapons, not with technology, but with the one thing the galaxy feared most: memory. Ash Commander stood alone on the balcony of Citadel Dawn, looking out over Earth's sky. The war was not over. It never would be. But something had changed. We weren't victims anymore. We weren't rebels. We were something the galaxy would never forget again. Because while others sought to erase the past, we carried it like a sword. The stars had gone quiet. For the first time in memory, no battles raged, no distress calls, no systems burned. Even the nullborn, that ancient force of extinction, had vanished into the deep. But peace didn't bring relief. It brought something worse: uncertainty. Every species across the old Council territories watched Earth with a trembling breath held in their lungs. Because the war hadn't ended in treaties. No surrender, no celebrations, no ceasefire. Just a message from the edge of oblivion. We do not forget. And the terrifying silence that followed. Across 12 sectors, former Council worlds held emergency summits, desperate to decide what came next. Some systems declared independence, believing the threat was over. Others pledged allegiance to the human accord, not out of loyalty, but out of fear, convinced Earth was now a power beyond containment, and that to oppose it was to vanish. The galaxy had learned something no one wanted to admit. Humanity didn't need to invade anymore. It just needed to exist. But the problem wasn't out there. It was back home. Because Earth itself was changing. The things it had done to survive, the measures it had taken, weren't being dismantled. They were being expanded. Citadel Dawn, Earth's command capital, was no longer just a fortress. It had become a city-state, closed to all non-human life, fully militarized. Every citizen logged, tagged, and monitored. The outer districts were powered by ash core reactors, bleeding-edge tech born from salvaged nullborn fragments and Council weapons fused together. What began as a defense system had become the new normal. And for the first time since the firebreak order, people started to whisper. Not about victory, but about fear. Ash Commander had not stepped down. He had not retired. He didn't speak at victory parades, because there weren't any. No medals, no songs, just systems falling in line, and a single doctrine echoing through the Accord's channels. Peace through memory, strength through pain. Obedience through fire. But behind closed doors, some of the original architects of the rebellion began to worry, because Ash didn't just command fleets now, he commanded history. In a meeting deep beneath the ice quarter of Luna Base, 5 surviving members of the Iron Assembly gathered in secret. They weren't idealists. They were killers, tacticians, war-hardened ghosts who helped build the machine that tore down the Council. But even they saw it now. Ash was changing, and Earth was following him into something far colder than survival. "He's not planning for peace," one of them said. "He's planning for eternity. He never meant to rebuild Earth," another added. "He's building something else, a regime, a legacy." "A weapon," whispered the third. They debated only one solution, a final override. The Ember Protocol, a failsafe embedded in Ash's neural command systems back during the early firebreak days, meant to be used only if he turned rogue. It had only one function: shut him down, permanently, no trial, no ceremony, just silence. But activating it required consensus, and the vote was never taken, because before they could finish their discussion, the room lit red. Emergency alert, unauthorized breach. The doors sealed, and one by one, the assembly members were disconnected from their implants. Dead. No struggle. No trace. Only a final message left on the chamber's central display. A message that made the blood of every technician who later reviewed it run cold. Command firebreak, still active. Elsewhere, on the outer colonies, strange reports began surfacing. Earth agents, fully blacked out, anonymous, bearing no insignia, appearing on worlds that had not declared formal loyalty to the Accord. Sometimes they arrived in secret, sometimes openly, but every time a leader disappeared. A governor, a trade chief, a scientist, no trials. No explanations, just a quiet change in planetary policy, followed by the silent appearance of Earth's new sigil, a ring of stars. No center, just orbit. As if saying, we are the gravity now. Back in the Accord's growing capital hub on Mars, Admiral Kalen Rowe, once a loyal fleet commander during the early rebellions, now held a private file. It had no clearance ID, no official mark. It had come through an anonymous drop in a quarantined data relay. Inside the file was a recording, one of the earliest transmissions from the last ship, now scrubbed from all official archives. It showed Witness 09 standing in the hollow, speaking not to Earth, but to the nullborn. And his words weren't angry. They were afraid. "You're not the enemy," he said. "You're the memory that never ends. But we're worse. We don't erase pain. We become it. We wear it like armor. We pass it down, teach it, build with it. You want silence, we want echoes." Then the screen glitched, and in the final frame, Witness 09's eyes flickered black, just like the nullborn. Kalen sat in silence. He understood the implication. Project Gethsemane hadn't just touched the nullborn, it had let them in, and now they were spreading, not as invaders, but as ideology. Humanity hadn't defeated the nullborn, they had absorbed them, and now they were becoming something far more terrifying, a species that remembered pain so deeply, it began using it as currency. Ash Commander delivered a rare public address days later, his first in over a year, broadcast across all Accord systems. His face was calm, his uniform black without rank. The backdrop behind him, no flag, no Earth, just stars. The galaxy once mocked us for being emotional. They laughed at our grief, feared our rage, called our scars weakness. But now they follow, because we showed them what emotion truly is. It is not noise. It is command. It is the memory that guides every weapon, every law, every truth. The galaxy tried to erase us. Now, we are the historians of fire. He didn't blink once, didn't pause, didn't breathe like a normal man. Some swore his voice echoed with something inhuman. Others dismissed it as distortion. But when the speech ended, every system under the Accord's reach received the same follow-up directive. Reinforce memory protocols. Execute Phase 2. No one knew what Phase 2 was, not even the Accord's senior fleet admirals. But something had shifted. Something had accelerated. Back in the deep void, far beyond even Earth's new reach, listening probes buried near the event expanse, the last known region where the nullborn were seen, picked up one final signal, weak, faint, repeating. A voice, not nullborn. Human. Male. "This is Witness 09. They left. But they didn't take it with them. It's in us now. We remember too well. And that is how it spreads." Then silence. The galaxy, once united in its fear of Earth, now feared something else. The idea that Earth had become a living archive of everything the universe once sought to forget. A planet, not of conquerors, but of curators, caretakers of pain. And the frightening realization was this: Earth didn't need to destroy the stars. It only needed to teach them. Because if you let humans in, you let in everything they've ever survived. And once you remember their history, it becomes yours too. They called it Phase 2. No one outside the command corps knew what it was. Not even the Accord's high admirals. No official announcement. No ceremony. Just a new set of protocols uploaded to every terminal in human Accord space. Military, civilian, diplomatic, educational. It didn't matter. When the download finished, every screen lit up with 3 words: truth through suffering. And then came the second message: begin reconciliation. The galaxy assumed humanity would rebuild after the war, that they'd take their victory, lock down borders, and vanish again, proud but isolated. That was the pattern. They were wrong. Because Phase 2 wasn't about borders. It was about culture. Earth didn't want space. It wanted thought. The first trial began on Yarul III, a council-aligned trade world that had agreed to human Accord oversight in exchange for survival. They thought it meant looser tariffs, shared technology, maybe a few Earth officers stationed at their ports. Instead, they woke to find black-flagged transports landing silently outside their capital. Unarmed. No soldiers. Just hundreds of echoscribes, human delegates trained not in war, but in history. Walking archives, their faces covered, their tongues silent. They entered schools, libraries, temples, and within a week, every mention of the Council had been purged from Yarl's planetary records. Every child began reciting new creeds, Earth creeds. Every adult was issued a device called a remembrance node, a neural implant that replayed carefully selected moments from Earth's darkest hours, not as torture. As education, they were told, this is not punishment, this is perspective. The Yarl leaders resisted. They demanded to speak to Earth. Ash Commander didn't respond, but they did receive one message days later, beamed through the Accord's primary relay. Peace is not silence. Peace is understanding pain. You will understand. And when the Yarl High Governor threatened revolt, his memories, his actual personal memories, were scrubbed. Earth used a memory pulse to erase his emotional history. He woke up a blank shell. The only thing he remembered? Nix. He wept for 3 hours, screaming apologies to people he never knew, and the next day, he publicly declared Yarl III a remembrance-aligned world. This wasn't conquest anymore. It was doctrine. Across the galaxy, it spread. Planets that had once flown council banners now displayed Earth's memory insignia, a downward-pointing triangle with a tear through the center. Every citizen wore black bands with a number on them. The number didn't mark rank. It marked exposure. How many hours of Earth pain they had been logged into. How many memories they had reviewed. How much truth they had absorbed. You could see it in their eyes. Alien children who had never seen Earth, crying in their sleep over names they didn't know. Jakarta, Nix, Solace Black. Their tears weren't forced. They were learned. Because Earth didn't want control. It wanted empathy through suffering. And it would carve it into every living soul it encountered. Back on Earth, in the chambers of Citadel Dawn, Ash Commander walked alone through the Hall of Reflection, a corridor lined with frozen images, each a still frame from humanity's worst moments. Not paintings, not statues. Real-time captures, suspended in time by tech stolen from the nullborn themselves. Each one was a scream, a death, a betrayal. He stopped at one image, the tribunal where Earth was sentenced for instigating the Nixxian conflict, where the Council condemned humanity and smiled while doing it. He stared for a long time, and when he finally spoke, it was to the silent air. They made us kneel. Now, they will learn why we stood. But not everyone on Earth agreed. A resistance had begun to brew, not in space, but at home. Veterans of the original rebellion, soldiers who fought to save Earth, not to turn it into a doctrine. They met in coded channels. Underground nets, hidden satellites. They called themselves the Pale Suns, a name from an old Earth myth about warriors who carried the pain of others, but never passed it on. Their leader was once a hero, Commander Aaron Hart, the man who led the assault that destroyed the Vrelic hives and saved 4 million human lives. Now, he was in hiding, because he refused to wear the memory band, refused to repeat the creed, refused to believe that pain should be passed down like scripture. In a hidden broadcast, he spoke. We became what we are by surviving. But we were never meant to make others relive what we endured. Pain made us strong. But now we use it like a leash. Earth doesn't teach anymore, it indoctrinates. This isn't Phase 2. This is the beginning of something darker. Ash Commander responded not with force, but with a message, a single, chilling sentence. Let them speak. They only prove the memory must continue. But the Pale Suns weren't alone. Across multiple Accord systems, signs of quiet rebellion grew. A teacher on Valtris 4 refused to implement remembrance protocols in her classroom. She was publicly removed. But her class uploaded her lessons to a deep channel relay, and within weeks, over 200,000 unauthorized downloads appeared across controlled territories. They called it the Clean Stream. History, unfiltered by Earth's pain. Just facts, just truth. The Accord labeled it disinformation. Possession of clean stream data became a capital offense. But downloads didn't stop. They multiplied, because the truth had finally cracked through the silence. Not all pain is meant to be inherited. Then came the moment Earth didn't expect. A species once considered irrelevant, the Siraki, a nomadic, small-framed people known for passive diplomacy, announced they would no longer comply with Accord integration. They broadcast a single statement: "We will not trade our dreams for your nightmares." Earth gave them a deadline: comply or be cut off. But the Siraki didn't fold. They activated their long, dormant starlight drives, ancient tech that allowed their entire fleet to move as one, far beyond known sectors. They left everything behind. They didn't fight. They just disappeared. And for the first time in years, Earth felt something it hadn't felt since the days of betrayal. Loss, because domination isn't the same as loyalty, and you can't convert every mind. Some simply drift beyond your reach. The Pale Suns broadcast another message. This one wasn't hidden. It was public. We don't want to go back to the old Earth. But this Earth, this isn't what we bled for. Ash was our hammer. He broke our chains. But now he builds new ones. And if we let him, the whole galaxy will kneel, not because they must, but because they've forgotten what it means to stand. Ash Commander stood alone in Citadel dawn, watching the stars flicker from the observation chamber. The rebellion didn't scare him. The galaxy's resistance didn't either, because he knew something they hadn't figured out yet. Something darker than fire. Memory, he said softly, isn't about truth. It's about who survives long enough to tell it. And with that, he initiated Phase 3. Its name was never spoken aloud, its purpose never logged. Only one file contained its purpose. Locked, encrypted, labeled with a name no one dared use anymore. Witness 09. They always thought Earth would fall to invasion, from above, from within, from beyond. But in the end, Earth wasn't broken by fleets. It wasn't brought down by the nullborn, not even by war. It was broken by a memory. Phase 3 had one purpose: preserve control. If Phase 1 was war, and Phase 2 was doctrine, Phase 3 was the final firewall, the last measure to ensure that no rebellion, no resistance, no ideology could challenge Earth's hold on the stars, and at the center of it was one being, Not a soldier, not a leader, not even human, not entirely. Witness 09. Officially, 09 was decommissioned after the nullborn encounter. Too unstable, too exposed, disconnected and sent into stasis. Unofficially, he never left. His mind, saturated with centuries of Earth's trauma, had become something far worse than a living archive. It had become addicted. Pain wasn't just knowledge anymore. It was identity. The more he remembered, the more real he became. And when he vanished from the hollow, only Ash knew the truth. Witness 09 was Phase 3. The Pale Suns knew they were running out of time. Their clean networks were being purged faster than they could replicate them. Entire planets were going dark under cultural quarantine. Every message, every whisper of defiance was being buried in layers of memory injections until no one could remember what life looked like without Earth's pain. But then, something changed. One night, in an abandoned comm relay just outside the Helix line, an anonymous broadcast interrupted the Accord's official memory stream. No source. No encryption. Just a voice, distorted but human, saying, "Do you remember who you were before they taught you to suffer?" Then came an image, a face, eyes hollow, skin cracked like dry stone, a man barely breathing, but recognizable. Witness Zhongun. Earth denied the footage, claimed it was Pale Sun propaganda, deepfake. But the problem wasn't the video, it was the effect. Because everywhere it played, memory bands stopped working. Entire remembrance nodes went offline. Echoscribes collapsed. Thousands of citizens, humans and aliens alike, woke up crying, not from the weight of injected grief, but because they couldn't feel anything anymore, like 09 had taken it with him. Ash Commander convened his council for the last time. Not the Accord leaders, not the admirals. Only one being sat across from him in that silent chamber. The Echo Replica, an AI grown from 09's earliest brainwave scans, designed to simulate the mind of the witness and monitor emotional fidelity in all Accord systems. Now it sat still, unblinking. Ash stared at it. "Where is he?" The AI replied, "He is in all of them." "And none." Ash's jaw tightened. "He's corrupting the memory?" "No," the replica said. "He's cleansing it." The Pale Suns gathered their final fleet, not for battle but for a signal. They had intercepted fragments of 09's path, traces of his thoughts, skipping through the void like static. He wasn't hiding. He was dispersed, his consciousness embedded in every system that had ever absorbed memory from Earth's war archives. And he was awakening something even Ash didn't see coming. On day 12 of the collapse, 12 human-controlled worlds refused synchronization with Earth's memory net. On day 13, over 400,000 remembrance nodes imploded simultaneously, their cores liquefied by an unknown internal pulse. And on day 14, the first fully human colony, Bastion Prime, voted unanimously to sever ties with the human Accord. Their reasoning was clear. "We remember everything, but we don't know who we are anymore." Ash didn't blink. He initiated Black Protocol Ashfall, the purge of all non-loyal systems. No negotiations, no broadcasts, just one command: erase, ships launched, colonies burned, fleets moved with surgical precision. No room for rebellion, no room for memory not authorized by Earth. But they were too late, because Witness 09 wasn't attacking from above. He was inside. He didn't need ships. He had become an emotion, a question. A glitch in the soul. What if pain isn't meant to be passed down? And Earth began to fracture, not from bombs, from doubt. Soldiers hesitated, teachers paused, memory bands failed, and Ash Commander changed. He didn't sleep, didn't eat. His eyes no longer blinked. His voice echoed like something more than human, the same way 09's did. In the final days of the Accord, Ash stood on the edge of the Council Monument, the ruins of the once great tribunal that had betrayed Earth. He had rebuilt it not as vengeance, but as a reminder. And now it was empty. Ash looked up at the stars. He spoke into silence. "You betrayed us." "And so we learned never to forget," a voice answered, but not through speakers, not through comms, from inside. "You remembered so well," it whispered. "You forgot how to live." Ash turned, and there stood Oro-9. No weapons, no army, just a man with too many faces, eyes that had seen too much. The two didn't fight, they didn't argue, they just stared. Because in 09, Ash saw what he could become. And in Ash, 09 saw what he had escaped. One had weaponized memory, the other had become memory. Both were monsters, but only one wanted to stop. What happened next? No one saw, no recordings, no logs. Only a final message, broadcast across every human Accord system, just before the entire memory net collapsed. Pain must be remembered, but it must never be worshipped. The Accord fell overnight. Ash Commander vanished. Citadel Dawn shut down. The stars went quiet again. But this time, peace didn't come from fear. It came from forgetting. The Pale Suns didn't rebuild the galaxy. They didn't claim power. They just turned off the memory machines. They let people feel what they needed to feel, their own pain, not someone else's. And across the galaxy, for the first time in centuries, people began telling stories that weren't about war. Witness 09 was never found, but some say he walks among the stars, not as a god, not as a prophet, but as a witness still, a reminder of what happens when pain becomes law. And on the ruins of old Earth, in the ashes of Citadel Dawn, a statue still stands. Not of Ash, not of Oro-9, but of a child holding a memory band in one hand and a flame in the other, and beneath it, carved in steel, we remembered too much, and nearly forgot ourselves,